Good evening, and welcome to Ridgecrest Talk, the Thursday night version. I'm Al Huey, along with my partner, Robert Eierman, and tonight we're honored to have with as our guest, again, Mr. Don Zdeba from the Indian Wells Water District. He's the general manager there, and I think we're going to talk about water tonight.
Sounds fair to me.
That
thank you.
sound good?
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it.
We're glad to have you back. Thank you for coming.
This is the second of many visits we're going to have with you. What do you think of the current rainfall we're having? Is it helping us out in any kind of way?
Well, I think it's wonderful to see this pattern of storms coming into California. As far as locally, I don't think it's going to do our basin much good right now. But as far as Southern California, as you know, gets most of its water from Northern California. And I was just reading this morning that the snowpack in Northern California is at 140% of its normal average for this time of year. Last year it was only 14%, so that's very encouraging.
Yeah, that is super
But
encouraging.
nothing in the Sierras yet to report.
Well, that's the snowpack in the Sierras and the Northern Sierra.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. And also,
So that will help us when it comes time to spring.
it'll
and
help Southern
runoff.
California for sure, and Central Valley. Also, I saw an article that the Los Angeles County Department of Public Works, the first storm that we got, the big one,
Mhm.
they were able to capture 1.8 billion gallons of water, which is enough to serve 44,000 families for a year. So
Wow.
again, these storms are good. It's a good pattern, and let's hope it continues all winter. The experts are saying that we need at least 150% of normal precipitation to get to where we need to be.
To get normal.
Normal.
Yeah.
Reservoirs are still relatively low. I checked this morning. You can go, I believe it's a DWR website, Department of Water Resources website, and each day they update the status of all the major reservoirs in the state. And most of them are still fairly low, 30, 40%, but it's a lot better than it looked coming into the year. So I do remember last Thanksgiving, seeing snow on the Sierra just before Thanksgiving, and I think that's the last I saw of the snow all winter. You get that first snowfall early, and it looks like it's going to be encouraging, and then it just stopped last year. But this year it looks like it may continue. I think there's another storm forecasted.
But don't they normally measure here just north of us, like around Bishop or just south of Bishop, the snowfall?
I believe there are 8 measuring stations along the Sierra.
Okay.
I don't know for sure where the closest one is here, but I know there are 8 that they measure the snowpack in, and of course that's what they use to determine how much runoff we're going to get
Right.
Yes.
from the snowfall. So.
Now, how many inches of snow equals 1 inch of rain?
Oh boy, this is a trick question.
No,
I
I
should
don't.
no, I should know that. I don't. I think it's somewhere around 6 inches, but I'm not sure.
Okay, that's the
You
area that I had heard.
Yeah, I think it's
6,
about
8,
6
10,
inches.
something like that.
And so this is hopefully going to help recharge our aquifer.
It can help, especially if there's snowfall in the Sierra here. That's what really helps us. The snowfall that melts slowly in the spring, the warmer months, and percolates down into the groundwater. The rainfall we get, of course, it doesn't help us that much. A lot of it doesn't really percolate into the ground. It evaporates, and
Unless we get a slow, gentle rain.
gentle
But
rain.
we generally get,
it takes a while for it to
Yes.
percolate down, if it does
Okay.
percolate down. A lot of it's lost evapotranspiration, and also, as I said, evaporation gets caught in the clay layers. But the rain it's encouraging to see it, and like I said, I hope the pattern continues, and it's looking much better than it did last year at this time.
Well, it brings me to the question of if the rainfall is going to help our aquifer, then I guess one can assume that our aquifer is being fed by up north in some way, shape, or fashion.
Most of the recharge for the Indian Wells Valley is from the Sierra front. There is, according to groundwater models, there is some amount of recharge that comes from Rose Valley.
From where?
From Rose Valley to the north.
Oh, okay.
The quantities that are that you see in the model are anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 acre feet, which is, it's not a lot, but it's something that it's helpful. But again, we don't know for sure how much is coming through. It's just based on models that were done within the valley. Brown and Caldwell did the modeling.
Here's another hypothetical. Now, we know that DWP, LA DWP, has been around for a while. They're drawing off most of the springs and streams and so forth up north, right?
Right, and they're actually pumping groundwater as well.
Oh, they're pumping groundwater up
Yes.
north.
Mhm.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It-
So, I guess what I'm leading to is their use of that water has a negative effect on us to some degree. When I say us, I'm talking about our water basin.
Well, I guess you could say that, but again, I don't think it's very significant, the amount of water that comes from the north through the gap into the Indian Wells Valley. So they're pumping. I don't really think it impacts us significantly. Most of our water, again, comes from recharge on the Sierra front here in the valley.
Yeah, but if they're pumping it out up north and drawing it out of the streams and rivers, and
I think what he's saying is that water would never go into our aquifer. Is that correct or false?
Right, we're not getting that much through from Rose Valley into the Indian Wells Valley. There's not that
Okay.
much coming through. So
Okay.
what they're doing on that side into that valley has very, very little impact on what we have here.
okay. We only have about a minute left, so, and I have several questions I want to get to here. Would you say, when we come back, because we won't get into it now, we won't have enough time, but let's talk about how the local ag off of Brown Road and surrounding area around here is impacting our water basin, both present and past. So we'll get into that when we come back. Stay tuned.
And welcome back to the Thursday evening edition of Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Robert Eierman, along with co-host Al Huey, and we are talking with Don Zdeba, General Manager of the Water District. And I think that you had a question you wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Al.
Would be interested to know how the local ag, particularly all those alfalfa and the nut trees, cashews, pistachios trees, are affecting our groundwater, both in a historical aspect, as it was in the past and present day. And that's assuming there's some records that the district has.
Well, the records that we have go back to 1975. The records that are the data is gathered and maintained by the Indian Wells Valley Cooperative Groundwater Management Group.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, the data goes back to 1975. And my recollection is back in 1975, agriculture accounted for somewhere around 29% of all the total pumping in the valley. As of the numbers that were reported in 2013, and of course we'll be getting new numbers within the next month or two, but as of 2013, that had increased to about 49% of the total pumping in the valley is for agriculture.
Wow. So you're saying that it didn't quite double, but it increased by like 75%?
And it accounts for about half the water pumped in the valley now. And that's based on information that the members, the signatories of the Cooperative Groundwater Management Group submit each year. And we also do get numbers reported to us by Meadowbrook Dairy the alfalfa farm to the north. And this last year, we actually got accurate numbers reported by the agricultural operations themselves. Prior to that, we had to do some estimates just based on acreage and known values for per acre use of certain crops. For example, alfalfa, depending on the efficiency of the irrigation system, figure 6 to 8 acre feet per acre per year, and pistachios somewhere around 3-4 acre feet per acre. So we would just do estimates, but we actually had numbers reported from the farmers this last year, so they should be better numbers. And again, based on those numbers, about 49% of the pumping in the valley, almost 50% is agricultural.
Okay, and there's been what's appeared in the newspaper several times is that it's 80%. So we can now debunk that as being not true.
No, it's definitely not 80%.
Okay,
no.
Good, because I've seen a number of people writing in letters to the editor and so on and so forth, and quoting that number. So I'm pleased to hear that it's not quite that high. So all of us taking 1 hour showers, I'm teasing, accounts for the other 50%, along with our washing of clothes and dishes and
that's
watering our lawns.
That's
and flushing
public
toilets.
use. It's for irrigation. It's domestic use for public, commercial, residential. So businesses, the college,
Okay.
hospital, hotels. Yeah.
So it not only is that ag has an impact. Clearly, residential and all those other things that you mentioned has an impact. We're 50% of it, of the water usage.
And a large percent of that percentage, Robert, goes towards irrigation, landscape irrigation. The statistics you see or read are typically around 60% of the residential use is used for landscaping irrigation.
Wow.
So that's probably the biggest potential to conserve water.
To conserve.
And one thing the Water District's looking at in terms of conserving water is possibly some sort of program. Most everybody in the valley has evaporative coolers, master cools.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And not everybody has the purge pumps on their cooler that periodically cycle the water
The clean
out.
machine kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
We've gathered some data on those purge pumps. If you've got an evaporative cooler during a typical cooling season,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a purge pump, you're going to use on order of about 6,300 gallons of water during the course of the cooling season. If you don't have a purge pump, you just have a bypass where you're
It's a
constantly
little bleed off.
bleeding water. It's over almost 4 times that. It's about 2,100, close to 23,000 gallons.
Wow.
So there's a lot of water that's just going to waste. Now, a lot of people have little bleed lines going out to trees or shrubs or
Right.
something like that, but still the point is, I did a little experiment this summer myself because I didn't have one of those purge pumps on my cooler.
Mm-hmm.
I just took the bypass line out of the dump, if you will,
Mhm.
and just put it back into the cooler. Every third or fourth day, I just put a little more water, freshen the water up a little bit. My water bill went down from 25 to 30% the months of July and August.
That's significant.
So it is significant.
Yes.
So, if the water district, you consider the number of coolers in the valley and the fact that each cooler has the potential to save 16,000 gallons, it adds up.
It most certainly adds up.
So we're looking at some way to incentivize perhaps getting those installed. You can get them at Home Depot or the True Value Hardware. Over in
Walmart.
Eierman. Yeah, anywhere.
Yeah. I have one on mine. Yeah. Are the rules for ag the same on the other side of the mountain as they are here? As far as water?
As far as water rights,
Water rights, water usage, restrictions, that type of thing?
well, as far as water rights, there's agriculture would fall under what's called overlying rights. If in the state of California, if you own property, you have the right to pump water for beneficial use on that property. So in the case of agriculture, they're pumping water beneath their property for use on their property to grow a crop.
Right.
So in that respect, yes, the answer is yes, it's the same all over the state, that law, the overlying right, pertains to everybody. There's a little caveat there that You just can't pump and pump and pump. If you get to the point where you're impacting your neighbors, then you get into legal situations such as adjudication, or somebody's going to file a lawsuit because you're impacting them significantly.
But there's no difference on this side of the mountain as opposed
Not in
to,
terms of laws or rights for agriculture, no.
but there certainly is a difference with respect to how much water is below the ground.
Absolutely. Every basin's different.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
when we're going to go to a break here shortly, but when we come back, we want to talk about the true meaning of what 2 inches a year in overdraft means.
2 inches?
Isn't that what the aquifer is going down?
2 feet. 2 feet.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about that more with Mr. Don Zdeba from the Water District when we get back. Join us.
And welcome back to our last segment here on the Thursday evening edition of Ridgecrest Talk, where we're hard on the issues but soft on the people. And our guest tonight is Mr. Don Zdeba from the Water District. And before our break, I was leading into the overdraft is here about 2 inches. Most recently,
That's what's been reported.
It's been reported that that's what the overdraft is.
It's 1 to 2 feet is what the overdraft is. Yes.
Wow.
I'm not sure what you're reading.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm reading either. Anyway, all right, whatever the amount is of overdraft that we're currently having in the aquifer. My question is, what does that mean? And what I'm getting at is, if that overdraft means we run out of water in 20 or 50 years, that's a problem. If that means that we run out of water in 500 years, that's totally different. In other words, what I'm trying to find out is, what's the shape and the size of the aquifer? If it's a cone and we're drawing off the top, that 1 to 2 feet a year is going to just improve naturally as we go down deeper. If it's a reverse cone and we're pulling off the top, we're even in bigger trouble. If the aquifer is 500 feet deep and we're going down 2 feet a year, we got a long time. If it's 100 or 50 feet deep, we're in trouble. So that's where I was trying to go is, do we know, and if not, how do we find out the shape, size of the aquifer?
You can probably think of the basin as a bathtub sort of shape.
Okay.
And in terms of the overdraft, you're right. Since the 60s or so, the average has been a foot and a half. As of late, with the increase in pumping, of course, that's accelerated somewhat in some areas. As far as how deep the water is, we at the Water District have deep wells over 1,000 feet deep, and water levels from maybe just shy of 400 feet to a little over 400 feet. So there's a lot of water still down there. The issue that you would face before running out of water is an impact on water quality.
Yes.
You'll see an increase in your total dissolved solids, that's referred to as TDS. And obviously, the higher the TDS, the poorer the quality of water. So that's probably the issue that is facing us before we're looking at running out of water. The fact that the basin's in overdraft is not unique. There are several basins in California that are in overdraft. This particular basin is classified by the Department of Water Resources a medium risk basin, not a high risk basin. There are other basins in California at high risk. In fact, I was just looking at the list of basins and how they're classified, and the Indian Wells Basin is ranked number 117 out of the 500 and some basins in the state. Out of about 500 and so 517 basins or so. And the fact that we're in overdraft and these other basins are in overdraft, several high priority basins in overdraft, is part of what stimulated the state to pass the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act here recently. You may have read or may know that California is actually the last state to regulate groundwater with this legislation. They were joking that every 100 years California passes significant water legislation because in 1914 they passed legislation for surface water. Now 100 years later they're passing legislation for groundwater. So it's significant. There's a lot of work to be done. The county is taking the lead on forming the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. They've actually contracted with the water district's geohydrologists, the consulting geohydrologists, to help them form the sustainability agency. I know there's a lot of things going on right now. You may be aware that the agency has to be in place by June 30th of 2017, which is not that far in the future considering all the work that has to be done. So getting that agency up and running, putting together a plan for how to address water issues in the valley to ensure that we are sustainable.
What does sustainable mean? If we've been in overdraft for many, many years, are you trying to get to the point where we're not in overdraft?
Yeah, the definition that the state uses for sustainability is a condition where you're ensuring water for the future while you're meeting the needs of those present and meeting environmental health.
Future's a long time.
It is.
I mean, is it 1,000 years? Is it 200 years? What does it mean?
Well, you're essentially, put it simply, you're trying to get to a condition where water coming into the valley is equal to the water you're taking out of the valley.
But that's never been.
It hasn't been, but you have to get to that point.
Well,
and how do you do it?
Yeah, none of us here are God, so how do we do that?
We have to put that plan together, and part of that will probably be...
The logical conclusion here is you can't take that hour shower. You got to take a 5-minute shower.
But if we've never had a situation where we haven't been in overdraft,
we have years ago.
How is it reason? What's years ago?
Before the base was here, before,
That's an awful long time in history, since the valley was reasonably populated.
Yes.
And comes to mind when we had the big BRAC, the water district was asked, we have enough water for all these people to come in. Yeah, we have plenty of water.
And in the 1980s, we were going to grow to 100,000 people. Do we have enough water? Absolutely.
Now the population's almost the same as it was in the 80s, and we're overdrafted.
Right. So what I'm trying to say is that doesn't sound very reasonable to me. Now, if they said to get to a position where you have a foreseeable water future, that makes sense. But to have water for forever, I don't know that that's even possible, other than doing something different like desalinization, like importing, like etc.
And absolutely all those things would go into the sustainability plan that has to be developed. You have to look at using what you have more efficiently and more effectively, like we talked about earlier.
I just want to make one more point. All those viewers out there that think that we're running out of water, please tell them that we're not running out of water anytime soon.
Not imminently.
Thank you.
No.
Certainly.
All right. We're going to have you back again because we got to discuss this some more, and we'll talk to others. So join us again back here next Thursday for Ridgecrest Talk, and Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.